So I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the February meeting of the Wyoming State School Board of Education. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Broderick here. Mr. Feldmeyer
Here.
Mrs. G here. Mrs. Aller
Here. Mr. Thomas is here via, he's in a little box over there. So I
Not officially here. But
I want to recognize that you are here, Ilya, so you are
Thank you,
welcome.
Jim.
And we also want to welcome our superintendent who had an interesting last week.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Thank you for your well wishes. I'm doing fine. I did have a little bit of a health scare in the office on Friday, but doing just fine. Just a little bonus on the forehead to remind me of it. Yes, but I'm doing fine. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We were pleased to be back with us. So may I ask everyone to please join me in the pledge? We took our flag over when we celebrated the first semester. We took it over the middle school. Possible we forgot to bring it back. There it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We now have recognition of the public, and I understand we do not. Thank you. I'm going to just double check with you.
We do not
So
have any.
We do not have anyone who's asked to speak tonight. So we're going to go right on to a special presentation. The school board, well, the city school district was asked to nominate someone to serve on the Wyoming Economic Development Commission. Now, that is a city group, but we have a school representative, and we asked Mr. Jim Hill to serve on that group as our representative. Prior to Mr. Hill, Grant Hoffman was our representative, but he was recently elected to city council, so he had to resign as our representative. So Mr. Hill is going to talk about Wyoming housing and demographics, and I believe that Mrs. Johnson, who also participated in one of the economic development meetings, is going to be involved as well. So would you like to set this up?
Yeah, actually Jim is going to be doing most of the talking, if not maybe most of the talking. The board members have a copy of the full presentation of the subcommittee that was presented, and I know he's going to kind of hit the highlights of it, but you have the full presentation. Jim is just going to hit some of the highlights of their work from late fall of last year. And remind me, has this gone to council yet?
No, it has not.
Okay, so you guys are getting a sneak peek
Okay.
of the work, and then council will again see the full presentation, and then make some decisions about how they're going to use the data. But I attended, Jim invited me, and the city folks invited me to listen to the presentation, found it incredibly valuable for some of the work that we're doing with primary facilities, enrollment planning, and just some kind of advocacy work. And so I thought it would be really important if you all heard some of that in the meeting. So take it away.
Okay, thank you for asking me to be here. I'm honored to be your representative. It has been worked on since last September, what we're doing. But first, let me tell you about the Economic Development Commission in a short 2 sentences or so. The Economic Development Commission works with the city council, the developers, residents, and the business community with a focus on improving the economic climate of the city. The Economic Development Commission consists of 7 citizens and representatives from the Planning Commission, Promote Wyoming Commission, the Wyoming School Board, and the City Council and the business community. They meet as needed, or I should say we meet as needed on the first Tuesday of every other month at 7:30 a.m. in the conference room of the city building. That gives you a brief background on what we're doing and what we're all about. Primarily, we're dealing with economic development and housing. You are all the experts with the schools, so we pretty much stay away from anything with the schools. But we formed a housing data subcommittee to gather data relating to the following goals and initiatives from the city of Wyoming in the 2017 master plan, which is available for the public to see and view if they care to do so at the city building at any time. The 3 goals and initiatives have been affordability, to ensure the Wyoming remains an affordable place to live and be a community for all ages. Consider the need to increase housing options within the community, for example, empty nesters, younger single adults, and young families. And identify sites, areas within the community, particularly within the city center, where housing products meeting the needs of aging residents could be developed. Establish general architectural guidelines for these properties areas and review and modify the zoning code as appropriate to facilitate the desired outcome. The subcommittee gathered from the following sources with this report, which as said, you have the complete report. Much of it is, just details and so on that we haven't really acted on anything, as I said earlier, but we highlighted a number of slides here for you to take a look at. The subcommittee gathered data from the following sources: U.S. Census in 2000, 2010, and 2020, the Hamilton County Auditor, Zillow, and the Neighborhood Scout, which is a website and online database of U.S. neighborhood analytics. The following slides that you will be looking at and that we will highlight here summarize some of the data we obtained, broken out between housing and demographic data. If you look at the next slide, which is on housing data, this is total housing units from the U.S. Census and property types from the Hamilton County Auditor data. And what it shows is that pretty much from 2000 to 2020, the number of homes in Wyoming has remained relatively static. It hasn't really changed that much. Now, how those homes were changed valuation-wise and so on, this is all part of the study and some of the information that we've received. But the most important thing is that these housing units and the property types have remained fairly static. There were owner-occupied properties, rental properties. That's on the far right there, the 5 little bars there. The total residential properties, the number of rental units, and the total residential units. As you see on the left, the total housing units in 2000 was 33. I can't read it here. 3220, 3248 in 2010, and 3135 in 2020. So as you can see, the number of housing units has remained fairly steady. We go to the housing data. The next slide. See, do I have that one? No, that is the 3 bars.
One more to the right.
More than the right. More.
Let's go
So it's
back.
housing data. Or
Sorry. Right here. Yeah, because this is the
Yeah.
built data. Yeah,
okay.
from slide 5.
Still have the 32. Which one would I slide here? Bear with me in 1 second here.
It's interesting when he was noting sort of the purpose of the study, some of the background data, super informative.
I know you all can't read this, but this is the year structures were built. And obviously we had a huge building in the 50s, but this one is 1899. Where the building moved into.
Correct, I would imagine.
Wow. So again, looking at this housing data, it shows the years that the structures were built. You can identify where your particular homes are. What that means just shows obviously the aging of the houses and what ultimately may be common has continued, especially during COVID, some of the remodeling that's been going on and people buying homes and, tearing them down, rehabbing them to some degree. I know there's a home right here on Walnut that was sold recently. And all of a sudden, in the last month or so, it was totally gutted. I don't know what happened. Someone probably didn't do their due diligence when they were looking at the house, but all of a sudden that house is gone. And the only thing that was left of it is the 2 bay windows on the east and west sides. But the interesting thing too is the estimate on the number of bedrooms from the 2020 census in the houses. And as you can mostly see, and then pretty much understanding, the 3 and 4 bedroom houses remain the highest number in that category on your chart to the right, which totally is not surprising. Now, one thing I should mention, we have not made any, as a commission, on our subcommittee, we have made no recommendations to city council at this point. As we stated earlier, city council hasn't seen the report yet. And there's no conclusions, it's just looking at it and being oohed and awed by what we see and what many of us know already in the city of Wyoming. So if we can go on to the next slide. Here's this back for you. Thank you. This is a comparison of home prices from Neighborhood Scout, which is a data collection and analytics platform. And basically it shows the prices of homes in the $0 to $70,000 category up to $1 million and more in the communities of Wyoming, Blue Ash, Madera, Mason, and Montgomery, with Wyoming being the blue bar. So you can see again here, that remains fairly compatible with what we expected with Wyoming against Blue Ash and against Madera throughout the price ranges and everything, with obviously the curve goes as an arc, especially in those communities with the exception of Mason, and I'm sorry, with the exception of just Mason and Montgomery there. So Wyoming is the blue bar, and you can see how the homes price have developed over the years.
As Jim mentioned, and again, we kind of go back to the purposes of the study, and understanding affordability and the goal of the strategic plan of the city to make sure there's affordable housing. About 28% of the homes are in the 140 to 281 range, and about 50% are in the less than 422 range. And so, the committee didn't get to the point of saying, like, this is the threshold of affordability, but they did have quite a bit of dialogue about the income and then home values. And so, I thought this particular slide was interesting, and especially compared to some of the other communities that they included as part of the study.
We've examined this. We haven't done a deep dive on it yet. As I said, it just really came out in the last couple of months, and we've looked at it and basically, what are we going to do now? And what are we going to do now is basically turn it over to city council and ask them, what do you want us to do with this? I mean, the city, as you may be aware, is undergoing some economic development studies right now with the North Corridor and the South Corridor and so on, and how housing is affected by that, or what will be done with housing. And there have been, some discussions. Do we need condos? Do we need places for empty nesters? Do we need, what type of homes do we need for families, to encourage more families to move into Wyoming, to keep the schools at the level that they are? Obviously, we're locked in a little bit, and annexation, that word hasn't come up in a long while, but I'm sure somewhere in the back of people's minds, the word annexation, or how we can improve and get more housing in the city that would continue to maintain the schools. So I think for anybody interested in the housing data, how we compare to the other communities around is fairly interesting. The other part of it, one of the other parts of it, of course, is the housing data with the potential empty nester and starter homes. If you look at that next slide there, the potential empty nester starter homes, there's condos and townhomes, there's small one-family homes that are less than 1,500 square feet. There's rental apartments. There's your total of the homes with potential empty nesters. You see? Okay. It's again, that's remained fairly static. And when we look at the demographics on the next slide, on the demographics data, it's remained pretty static in the middle for people who have the homes and the children in school age, 25 to 54 years.
25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 50.
Now we did some fairly liberal math there and said, maybe the age 25 to 54 are potentially parents of school age children. And so that's about 40% of the total. And now again, that's a lot of assuming, right? But it makes sense if you kind of think about it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
this is estimated. It's not scientifically gleaned. from, from the housing sales and so on, that determine exactly, how those bar graphs came to be. It correlates, this is something that we got from some of you here at the board. It correlates that there are about 35% of households enrolled in schools. And that's 1,089 for the state data out of 3,089 from the 2020 census data. 47% of the households have children under 18 for that census data. So it's interesting to see that 18% of those households have children under 6 years of age. Approximately 250 households have children under 6 years only, with some extrapolating census data between the households with children under 18 and households with own children of the household under 18. So it's interesting to see how this spread occurs and where it is. So again, those demographics are fairly accurate. It's a 2020 estimated population. Again, this is all taken from the US Census from 2020. We look at demographics data, and the portion of the population from the last 3 US Census that potentially fit the empty nester age group. And 45 years and older, 55 years and older, and 65 years and older. Again, that tells you, and what we've seen is that the empty nester group has remained fairly static again over the years as people who have grown up in Wyoming with their children have had their kids matriculate through the high school, through all the entire school system. They don't tend to leave Wyoming. So that keeps for a nice static community. Then again, what we talked about at one of the meetings was, we want the empty nesters here. They contribute to the diversity of the community, obviously. But then again, is that holding out younger parents in some cases who want to have kids who want to move into Wyoming? And there's a whole confluence of many different factors, which I'm not going to get into at this point because some of those are politically motivated and so on and so forth. But as you look at this and you see the percentage of the empty nester age group, they are there and they've stayed, and that those numbers have remained very static altogether. So
You'll see that there was obviously some crossover between our parent age group and kind of approaching the empty nester age group. So we've got, a little bit of crossover
So that's
because
45,
that age bracket.
55,
Yeah,
65.
yeah. Probably not the 65 and up for our parent groups, but we kind of, we had some in the 45 group and we maybe had some on the end of the 55 group.
Right.
I mean, generally, the empty nesters, when the largest percentage of them don't leave Wyoming. I mean, even if
Well, yeah, that
their children,
data is very consistent.
yeah, I mean, their children may be in other parts of the world, the country, whatever it is, and they're just not leaving.
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A. As I like to call many people, our
Exhibit B.
B.
Sorry. You're right. Great discussion in the meeting about the need for a little bit of community turnover, and it sort of speaks to the need for the study. We talk a lot about enrollments and in different board committees and at our board meetings, and how we kind of need a kindergarten class that has about maybe 100 to 120 students in it in order to keep things flowing. And without a kindergarten class of about 120, then our enrollment kind of falls off the stability that we've experienced for about 25 years. And so there is enough stability in that turnover that we can do good enrollment forecasting, but we kind of need it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it keeps us in business, right? Without a kindergarten class of about between 125, then
Some of you have probably heard me say before, as you recognize that we're empty nesters, my wife and I. Our family lives in Chicago, as many of you know. And we get the question frequently, when are you and mom going to move to Chicago before we have to move you to Chicago? That's the question that we always get. So it's funny now, so. As long as I gotta walk in and out. Okay. So the one last thing I want to bring up here is, we did pose a couple of questions to school board through, Susie and Tim. Talked about this to you a little bit. And basically, how many households approximately have students and young adults ages 5 to 20? And the superintendent, as I'm quoting here, offers this insight, and this is not data that's generally available. But here are a few issues that come up when thinking about that question. It's possible there are some children that are 5 years old that have not entered kindergarten by parent choice. We do have 18 to 20-year-old students in our count, and if they are active students, which usually means those of special needs still enrolled with us, those that are inactive would not be able to account for it as they are no longer on our rolls. We can share graduation numbers to compare with the actuals, and anyone still lives in the city. And the final question is, how many unique addresses are in the student population across all the schools? And the response was that we have 1,089 unique addresses according to your EMS state data. This number does not include homeschool, private schools, or scholarship students. So.
And that ended up being about 35% of households, that 1,089 unique addresses as part of our student data. So that's about 35% of households, which corresponded closely to our 40% of parents who, that 25 to 54 age group that we were maybe on the boundaries of a little bit. So some good data there.
So the data overall is good.
Yeah.
I encourage you to read the entire slides that you have. And if you have any questions at any time, just let me know and we'll make every effort we can to address them succinctly and to everybody's satisfaction. And certainly as we present this to city council and see what they would like to do or what they think the next steps would be, certainly I'm available to share that with you and we'll continue to share all the information that we have.
Continue to follow along with, as Jim said, as they present to city council and watch their recommendations. Jim's a fantastic representative for us, super engaged in the work, super engaged in our work. He and his wife volunteered in a number of our activities, so we're really appreciative of their commitment to the way it makes these
Thank you
schools.
very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That is good information, especially as we look at our primary facilities and the things that we may or may not be doing. Thank you. We're going to go on to the board of committee reports. Finance committee just met, and I'm going to turn this back over down and move out of the way again. Turn it back over to Mrs. Johnson.
Thanks, Jeannie. We've actually had 2 meetings since our last board meeting. We met once on February 7th to we review our salary and benefit analytic at every meeting. At our February 7th meeting, we also reviewed the January income tax payment and took a deep dive into the components of our income tax payment. We also started a conversation on the biennium budget process, and that ties to sort of my legislative update that I'm going to do tonight. So the state biennium budget, the state budgets in biennium cycles, and so we are approaching the next state biennium budget. And so that process has started with the governor introducing his version right around February 1st. So that is kind of making its way through its process. And we talked about that a little bit at our last finance meeting. We did meet just prior to the board meeting tonight. And we spent our time today focused on what we thought that maybe the most important financial work to come out of this time of the year would be an analysis of the budget. But as it turns out, there was a new bill that was introduced kind of mid-February, and as we've been reading and learning and working with our advocacy partners, House Bill 1 is worth a little bit of attention tonight so that we can understand what it means, how it impacts Ohio's public schools and Ohio governments. So that was the topic of our meeting at Finance Committee tonight. So I wanted to just so this is kind of half Finance Committee update, half legislative update. And so just wanted to use this slide. These are slides that were created by one of our advocacy partners, school business officials. Normally I would create my own slides, but this bill is moving super, super fast. And so there's a lot to digest. So I went ahead and just use their slides as a tool. So just kind of bear with me on that. So early on, the Republicans introduced a number of bills and they categorized them in those 3 categories that you can see up there. We are going to focus our attention tonight on House Bill 1, which is the property income tax bill.
Oh,
I think Susie is going to move through the slides for me.
She's gonna try.
The best one. So, introduced by a brand new freshman legislator who was sworn in, was recently elected, sworn in January. And this was his first piece of legislation introduced. So House Bill 1, the property income tax bill. Matthew is a Republican out of Lebanon. So a couple components. The first of which is a flat, and this isn't on the slide, but the first of which is a flat income tax proposal. And so, there are varying rates of income tax that have been shifted over the past 25 years, Ohio's income tax structure. And so the current proposal starts with a flat income tax rate of 2.75%. Well, that tax reduction at the state level will cost about $2 billion. And so in order for the state to offer that, they have to free up money in the state budget in order to offer that proposal. And so one of the ways that they plan to do that is to make some shifts in the way that school districts and local governments receive our funding. And so a couple things that are significant to our budget. The first is this 10% rollback. Susie, you want to go to the next slide? Just to make sure I'm not jumping ahead. I did jump ahead, sorry. So again, so the first piece is an single income tax rate of 2.75%, so a flat rate. How they would pay for that is they want to eliminate the 10% property tax rollback reimbursement. And so taxpayers, you all get a 10% rollback on your property tax. None of us as taxpayers pay 10% of our tax bill. Every Ohio taxpayer has this 10% paid by the state, and it goes to local governments in the form of a reimbursement. And so part of the proposal is to eliminate that reimbursement to schools. Okay. And so if that happens, then that's an automatic 10% increase for property taxpayers. Okay, because that rollback is no longer in place. If I had about 3 hours to give this presentation, I would talk to you about how that rollback was implemented a number of years ago as part of the income tax structure. So Ohio has a long history of the entanglement of income tax and property tax, because when the income tax was originally passed in Ohio, part of the deal was you'll pay this income tax, but you'll get a rebate on your property tax. Okay, so now we're in essence kind of maybe shifting that philosophy a little bit and thinking about that different. So flatten the income tax. The state would save money by not making that reimbursement. Okay, which means that taxpayers would automatically see a 10% increase, which they don't want. They've said that they don't want that. Their solution to that is Susie, you want to scroll down a little bit. There's some other minor changes too, but that aren't as big of an impact. Their solution to that increase to the taxpayer is to change the assessment. So all property tax owners in Ohio are assessed on 35% of their value. If you go to the auditor's website, your house is, the county auditor sets your value, and then you are assessed 35% of that. That's your taxable value. That's what you pay taxes on. And so in order to in an effort to make taxpayers whole and not have to see an increase of the 10% shift, they're proposing shifting the assessment percentage from 35% down to 31.5%, which is a 10% decrease. In theory, that works. If that's your only concern, are these three components. There's also a very convoluted inflationary adjustments if there are a number of things that happen that I'm actually not even prepared to discuss because it's very convoluted, and I'm not even sure about 3 days into this bill that I understand the inflationary adjustment. But it could change. It could go lower than 31.5%. But the initial proposal is the shift from 35 to 31.5. Now, a lot of complications in that and their impact to Ohio public school revenue. So if we receive taxes and taxes are paid on that 35% assessed value, and that value is reduced, then it would make mathematical sense that the revenue that we receive would also be reduced. However, there is this law that we talk about usually in reverse, House Bill 920, that has since 1976 offered a protection to taxpayers when values went up, effective millage went down. So when values go down, effective millage would now go up. House Bill 920 would be applied in reverse, which contradicts the legislative effort to reduce taxes. Because what would happen is the effective millage would go up and really your taxes would remain the same. Okay. There is a major question about whether House Bill 920 does apply in this circumstance. House Bill 920 is in the Constitution. So normally a shift like this would have to be changed by constitutional amendment. And those are voted on by the voters of Ohio. It's not just done by House Bill 1. If that makes sense. It's not quite that easy. So major question about whether or not House Bill 920 applies and how that would impact taxpayers and how that would impact recipients of property tax revenue. Okay, so this isn't just a Wyoming problem or a concern. This is a Ohio Public School District concern. And so we are continuing to monitor all of the developments that have happened over the past couple days. There's not been one hearing on this bill. It was just introduced. Sponsor testimony starts tomorrow, but we're just making sure that we all have an awareness, and we are, making sure that our advocacy partners, which hopefully will become you as our advocacy partners, will understand the long-term implication for Ohio's public schools, as we would likely debate this bill heavily in the State House over the next few weeks. So, this is just a narrative about how the 10% rollback would impact, but also it's going to, as you can see in red there, it also lowers the taxable value of people's property taxes, which in turn frees up money to the general fund. So, this is their philosophy, okay, that the general fund would pay for the 10% rollback. I think there's massive disagreement across the education community that their bill actually accomplishes what their stated goal is. So this is just some information. Local governments met last week. Again, there are two very different interpretations about the application of 920. We do expect to have some additional information this week. Interpretation number one is if House Bill 920 does apply, the effective millage rate goes up, which really negates everything that the bill is intended to do from the property tax side, and then could possibly result. So these are statewide data, not specific to Wyoming. Could be a 6 to 8% tax increase on property taxpayers, depending on your inside millage and your voted millage. And again, those are details for another day. But statewide, again, contradicts the intended purpose of the bill. Interpretation number two is House Bill 920 does not apply. And that would be a significant decrease in revenue to all of Ohio's public schools. And all of our levies, our bond village, our permanent improvement funds, and certainly our operating levy. We don't have any emergency or substitute levies. All of ours are continuing operating. And then also decreases to our local government partners. We've initiated just a quick conversation with the city about how this might impact them as well. We'll certainly stay connected with the city about what that looks like and the impact to other local governments. We don't have any TIFs, so that section doesn't apply to us. So I'm not going to go through the actual math of the examples. Again, we will continue to do those, as we continue to watch the bill's movement. Our best case scenario is the education community is able to advocate in opposition to this, and folks understand the significant impact it could have on our budget. So again, not one hearing has been held yet. The first hearing is sponsor testimony that is scheduled to start tomorrow. If you are so inclined, you can log on to the Ohio channel and watch the testimony from Columbus. But we will certainly be probably early in the process be submitting written testimony. We have, as a board, traveled to Columbus and offered testimony in person. We would likely be looking for some of our community partners to help us with that, probably some of our teaching staff, so that folks really understand how significant this is, not just to Wyoming, but across public schools in general. Again, we thought we were going to be kind of debating the budget bill, and really so far that one hasn't had a terrible impact. We do think that part of the approach is that this bill, House Bill 1, would get added to the budget bill, which makes it more difficult. The governor does have line item veto power in Ohio, but it depends on how it gets built into the budget bill. That could end up being concerning for us because it's easier to advocate against it as standalone. But at the same time, if there are other things that are part of the budget that we are also advocating for or against, it just complicates matters. So early in the process, but really important again from a financial committee, from a finance committee perspective, and from a sort of a legislative update perspective, just to understand where we're headed. We'll continue to know more specifics. I've been in a meeting or on a Zoom call every day about this since last Wednesday. I have one tomorrow, one the next day, one the day after that. So we'll continue to stay on top of it, partnering with the superintendent organizations, the school board advocacy. At finance committee today, Sandy, we encouraged Todd to make sure OEA had a stance. We've learned on some of our calls that they are, of course, opposed to this same piece of legislation. So just really important that we understand the impact to Wyoming and advocate, one for Wyoming, but two for public schools in Ohio. I know it's super complicated, you guys. Any questions?
I want to go back over it again, sorry. I need to wrap my head around it. So the first option, the first thing that comes up is a flat income tax.
Yes.
And that would affect us.
It would affect us as Ohio taxpayers. So if you take each of the components and stand alone. So right now there is a progressive income tax rate. The more money that you make, the more income tax that you're paying. And so if that is just item one, and that's the piece that you hear, I would imagine most people are on board with that. That sounds fantastic. You want to pay less state income tax. That sounds amazing, right?
Right.
But that's going to cost the state $2 billion.
Right.
And so that can't be a standalone option. I mean, the state has a lot of money in their rainy day fund, but that's $2 billion this year. I mean, the state can kind of get through 1 year of that, but after that, that's not happening.
So in order to make this flat income tax work, they have to find the 2 billion. And then the idea is then to go to the property.
Starting with their reimbursement, the reimbursement that they pay to schools.
Right. But
then when they do that, they said, oh, that would raise the property taxes of every property taxpayer in Ohio 10%. And we don't really want to do that. So our answer to that is to reduce the assessed valuation 10% from 35 to 31.5.
right.
In their mind, end of story. The end result that school districts across Ohio lose millions, if not billions of dollars, isn't part of the equation.
Right.
They've accomplished their goals.
We had one line in there from the speaker, from Representative Matthews, who said, well, then you have a levy. But to make up
Several.
that difference. But that would mean every school district in Ohio would be running a levy.
At very high millage.
At a millage that would not just cover your normal costs, but now you're making up
For the loss.
that loss
Yes.
that you're experiencing on this.
Yes. And levies are difficult. So a
Right.
school district, I'll use Wyoming as an example, who's been doing a lot of things right. We passed a levy in 2017. That was our first operating levy in, I'm going to say 12 or 13 years. And so we've been working really hard to stay off the ballot. And so we absolutely have to come back. And now without any, doing nothing different, we would be on, for some significant millage just to, make up for this. And so, and it's very confusing. I mean, I know that it's confusing and I apologize for that. And we've had this conversation. What do voters do when they're confused? They vote no, because it is confusing. And if the only thing you're hearing is, oh, I'm going to get a tax cut on the front end, then that sounds fantastic.
All right, thank you. Obviously, those of us on the school board, I know you've got at least one letter from OSBA, our advocacy group in Columbus today, and I assume if years are coming in every few minutes as the treasurer, ours will be coming in daily as well of things we'll need to do to look at how this could possibly affect us, because we are in a part of our levy cycle, which, as you say, we've tried to be financially very, very careful since the last, but we are in a place of levies are a natural part of school finance. That's the way this goes, but we're in that part of the circle where we were going to be needing an operating levy down the road anyway. But this
Everybody does. Levies are,
Right.
it's
It's
the
a
way
natural
school
process.
finance in Ohio is designed.
But this could throw us into just an entirely different place in terms of how much money we would need.
So our work here
Okay.
is advocacy at this point.
Right.
To work through our channels and then,
Okay.
we may be asking for some help from our community partners and our teaching partners as we work. through
Yeah,
that.
and I guess my other question, which you can't answer, is this person who has put this bill in has been a state representative for 30 days. And so obviously there is someone else there, some other organization, something happening that has helped to create this. Because I just barely grasp school finance after 14 years. Right, so. Because it doesn't, school finance and regular business, totally different.
Very much so.
All right, well, thank you. I'm sorry, anybody else? I kind of dominated that. I didn't mean to. I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Anybody else?
It's grateful to you to help us have a better understanding. That's so good.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. I thank you for that. We'll go on with our board committee reports. Citizens Advisory Committee is continuing to work, correct?
Yep, continue to work at a February 7th meeting. Both the two studies continue to prepare their upcoming presentations. And those will be on March 20th. That's the March 24 meeting. And at that meeting, we'll have the weighted grades study team reporting. And then on the April 17th board meeting, we will have gifted services reporting. So those are, which will come up in the next 2 months.
Okay. All right. And these reports, I value them very much. I mean, we obviously have put them to use over the years.
Yeah, they've done some great work.
Things
And
have
actually,
done so this-
we'll talk a little bit about a proposed change on times of buildings, which connects to one of the CAC studies that was done in.
All right, Superintendent Committee Liaison Reports, the Belonging Committee.
I'll chair on February 21st. We had a Belonging and Inclusion Collaborative meeting, and at that meeting, we reviewed the work of belonging, and really it was focused on two things. One is student voice, and we talked to our students and we asked them about their experience. And when they say, you know, we're doing some things really, really well, it's about celebrating those things. And when they say they think that there's some opportunities for improvement, we focus on those areas. And then the other piece of it is the staff professional learning. And really that staff professional learning or professional development is connected to building a climate where students feel valued, feel connected, and feel the sense of belonging. And really that's the climate where students perform their best. It all goes back to teaching and learning, but that climate helps them make sure kids can be successful.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything from the committee members? Can't see me. All right, thank you. Community engagement. Oh my goodness, so many things happening. Well, I attended as did you, the Black History program that was just last week.
Yeah. Read the media. Yeah.
Okay. It was excellent. We had dinner first, and then we had the kids put the whole thing together with the great assistance of B-Rob. I enjoyed myself immensely. Anybody else want to?
I just really appreciate the kids willing to do this twice. You know, once they had they had the school assembly and then they put the assembly on for the community, anybody that wanted to come. And I know there were some happy parents there and community members. I saw a neighbor who brought her 2 young sons. And it was really enjoyable.
This is also concert time. I went to the strings concert a week ago, and I think next week, all the bands line up. In string, yeah. I went to the high school strings.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was
Like, yeah,
beautiful.
middle school string.
Honestly, if you could make the spring concert, Ari Webb, I guess that would be his last concert. And he was spectacular. It's gorgeous. Well, the whole strings group is wonderful. Anything else?
I'm not, I know I'm not on it. I don't know if Ilya, but the school foundation fundraiser that's coming up on the 11th. So we're calling tickets for that, doing like a spring version of it. And that looks like it's gonna be great. So if people want to check that out, and then they have a great thing going on too. That's like if you can't go in person, how you can be getting tickets or getting on for the online auction.
We should probably all go together.
I'll be out of town, but I feel like for knowing that, they're giving good opportunities to
And
be
the
able
tickets are
to.
available until,
Right.
you know when?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm not sure.
I
Okay.
can't remember until
Yeah,
when.
check on the, right, on the deadline for that.
Because all of a sudden, you're right, it felt like everything was so far away, and then it's like, oh,
It's right around the corner.
that's coming up.
Kara and I, and your representatives attended a city school meeting last week with, some of the city council members. I think two things that they have going that are gonna affect us, they're going to renovate Vermont Avenue. And that's going to have a major impact on our buses and our drop off and pick up and whenever they have not even bids out, so I don't know when that's gonna happen. Also, I guess our buses will be affected by the Compton Road work that's going to be done, but we'll find that out as we go. Then I guess the other thing they talked about was the building right behind us is going to be renovated.
You're working on it every day.
Yeah, so we'll see something.
Yeah.
And then we shared with them our primary facilities. Since we're at that point.
WCIA is having an event too, the fourth, it's just a community event too. I'm trying to think different.
There's a big boys basketball game coming up on Saturday.
Yes.
And the swimmers just got back from state. Exciting things happening. All right, facilities committee.
We met, that was
just
on the.
Oh, Friday.
That's right. That's been on the 24th, yes. And so we had four big items, or really three big items. One was the primary facility options, just talking about the options that are being created to engage with our community on, and that will be coming up soon. And then the other piece connected to that was starting to think about a timeline to open up community engagement sessions and talk about the future of our primary facilities. And then we had two specific issues with regard to facilities that we were speaking about. One was a middle school elevator that we're struggling with a little bit, talking about a short-term fix and a long-term fix for that replacement. And then the boiler at Vermont and the struggles that we've had with that. We have had that fixed, which is good news, it needs to be done, but again, it's another thing that we're looking at long-term, over the next few years. Is that boiler sustainable? So we're looking for options right now. Anything else you guys would add to that?
You looked at where we're gonna be headed in the primary facilities that our next steps are on them.
Yeah, so that was, I feel like the biggest part of it, is like the options they came up with, but then breaking down all the community sessions, like they were very good at working backwards, like when do we want information by? And then like, how do we back up and schedule all of those? Will be great.
Planning and goal setting, I don't know.
No, we need to schedule,
We
I'd like
need
to
to-
schedule a March meeting before we had the spring break.
Right.
So be on the lookout. I have got a note to email that, and we're working on the next policy, same thing.
Our policy meeting will be in March
Yes.
at some point, yes. Do remember, we have a second reading coming up, with planning meeting also. So, but that's the one policy, though. The meeting we'll have in March will be the big one, with the big statute policy. All right, and student achievement.
Yeah, Thursday.
Yep, we've had two meetings
Yeah,
since our last meeting. We've met January 26th and then last week on Thursday, February 23rd. Three big items we spoke about were connected to calendars. So we spoke about the draft 24-25 school calendar. We also talked about a proposed change to the 23-24 school calendar, and I'll be more descriptive of those here in a little bit. But then we also talked about a potential time change for both the high school student day and the middle school student day to both be 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. And I'll speak to some of the rationale behind that recommendation. So those were three big items. We also spoke about over the course of those two meetings, professional growth and the professional growth that teachers are attaining throughout the school year. And then we always reflect on the evaluation process and how that's going for teachers.
Okay, and you're doing calendar later?
I will do that during the
When we get
Board
the
of Education
sheet.
report.
No, that I'm really early on that one, but I do feel like it's always just a good opportunity for like discussion and good feedback from teachers and staff to be talking about that, like what was valuable and what could be helpful, and really good discussion for all of those topics, and then good insight for me to hear it, especially like evaluations and the process of it. But nothing, I mean, other than that, those were the big things that I've gotten this time as well.
Right, thank you. Then we will move on to the Board of Education report. And there is only one item, well, no, there are two items, you're right. Lucy, sorry, you just told me that. All right, so we'll do the first item, which is our approving our membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association. And I think you all saw that as an insert to, exactly how that's set up. And then we'll go on to the second item, which is the district calendar.
Okay, great. And yeah, I apologize. This was added to the agenda. We had spoken for a while about bringing this to the board as a first read. When we create calendars, we have to have a first read and let that sit for about a month and then come back to it before it's approved. And this is a great opportunity just to allow feedback in our community. So the first item that I'll speak to is the draft 2024-2025 calendar. So you can see that up there. And again, our district leadership team, which has board members, administrators, school staff from each building, has really had great discussions on that have helped us arrive at this calendar. And this calendar has been shared with each building level parent advisory committee. So part of our process to share with PAC committees so that we can get feedback from those individuals representative of the entire student population. And so as I share this calendar, I also wanted to give you an idea of some of the ideas behind how a calendar is made and key factors that come into play when you do build a calendar. So you can look at the calendar that you see there. That's the draft 24-25 calendar as I walk through some of these points. Process wise, calendars are discussed and revised at our district leadership team meetings, as we talked about over the last few months. Those calendars then are shared with building staff. And so as we arrive at 2 or 3 different calendars that have different points of view, different angles, we share those out with each building level. We get feedback from buildings, and buildings share their preferences for those calendars. So that comes back to the district leadership team, or DLT, if you hear me say DLT. And then we arrive at one calendar that we think encompasses the feedback that we've heard, and we build that calendar, and that's what happened with this. And so when we build that calendar and we have an agreement within our district leadership team, we take that then to our PAC teams, which we've done in the last couple of weeks. And then we make any revisions if we see revisions needing to be made. And then that draft calendar comes to this meeting, which is what we call the first read. And the structure that we have in place will allow us now to include this conversation and this calendar in my superintendent update that will be coming out just following this meeting, which will give access to everyone to see that calendar and provide feedback. And then so it's planned at the March 20, 20th, the March 20th meeting, I would assume that we would come back and then vote on this calendar, or if there are any changes, then we discuss those. Okay. So when you think about a calendar, then several factors come into play. And these are just some of the big ones that have been discussed. So one factor is ending the first semester before winter break. And so over time, most districts have really seen that as an advantage to students to finish first semester before they have to leave for break. That way they're done. They don't have to maintain that information as they go away for a few weeks. Another key factor is balancing the number of instructional days in the first semester with the second semester. And sometimes that ebbs and flows, but we try as much as possible to keep the number of days first semester, second semester the same. That especially impacts high school where there are semester-long courses. Another key factor is maximizing the instructional time before students are responsible for state or nationally mandated assessments. So we want to make sure that we have as much instructional time before students are held accountable for those assessments. It just makes sense. And then a few other factors, legal mandates from the state, including testing windows or required number of hours of instruction that comes into play. Legal holidays, board holidays, professional development days also come into play. And then one of the other factors we consider is partial weeks. Sometimes partial weeks at the start of the school year can be advantageous for kiddos, especially our younger kiddos who struggle to have a full week starting time. But sometimes during the middle of the year, it's a challenge, and it really goes back to student attendance. Okay, so with those things in mind, if you look at then this draft, you can see some of the key dates. We have this August 14th start date for students, and that puts August 12th and 13th right before that as staff professional development days. Then if you look at the end of the year, I'll go straight down to the finish of the year. That makes Thursday, May 29th, the last day for students, with May 30th, the last day for our staff. So May 30th is a professional development day. The winter break, and while I'll speak just to the start and end, that seems to be the sweet spot that we've talked about in DLT. You know, can we start in that middle of August, that third week of August, and still end around the end of May? Maybe not necessarily by Memorial Day, but that still, it seems to be a balanced schedule where we're able to balance first and second semester. Winter break, you can see here, the last day before winter break is Friday, December 20th, and then students come back on Tuesday, January 7th. Professional development days, we do have, as I've spoken about, we've got 2 before the student's first day, 1 after the student's last day, and then we have Friday, October 4th, and that's connected to a board holiday. And then Monday, January 6th, which is right at the tail end of winter break. So in district leadership team, we talked a lot about professional development days and how do we best support need for professional development and learning as a staff, but then also knowing what types of calendars work best for families. And so what we did here is we moved a late February professional development day up to be that January 6th date. The team thought that connected to winter break, DLP thought that it was a better option instructionally and less of a concern for families as it doesn't create another 4-day weekend. Some people like that, sometimes it's a challenge. And so really, I think that the biggest point of view was in late February, it might have not been the most useful instructionally for staff to have it then. So we shifted it up and we thought that that Tuesday, January 21st day that you can see on the calendar also, that's similar to what we've had in past years, and it's helpful to follow. The team thought it would be pretty helpful to follow up that January 6th date with an additional opportunity. So I think those are all the highlights of the calendar. Am I missing anything? People have been in there?
It's graduation on the 30th, then May 30th.
Well, we haven't really pinpointed that yet. So that's something that we still need to talk through. That and conferences. And so we still need to do some work to identify and solidify where conferences would end up on this calendar.
It's normally on the Saturday after. I would just say, thank you for giving all that, because I know you've talked about calendar. We get a lot of feedback and and we try to listen to so many different bits, but I do think when you get to detail it and how much you all work on it. And I'm just gonna say it again, the amount of iterations for 24-25 was maybe 6. I don't know. I lost track. 7. I don't know. You all
Well, it
did like a
was-
6A, 5A. because-
It was 5, and then it got, once we picked one, and there were 5
Yeah, then you
versions. of
dive
it.
in.
Right.
But I just
Right.
think it's valuable because I know when we look ahead, like this year, for some people loved certain things and other people didn't like certain things. And you're always going to hit different pockets, but to really hear about what you put into thinking about it and how it looks, I think that one feels. This is what we're
Okay.
I think for
Yeah.
all of us, even if you don't
Well-
love it, sometimes you understand why you have to do it, right?
And some years are easier than others, and so calendar goes through a cycle, and yes, there's certainly calendar years that are easier than this, and this is one that wasn't. And I would anticipate the next few after that will be too.
Yep.
So again, that will be coming out within the superintendent update, and so everyone will have access to that. The next item on the addition to the agenda is the first read of a change to the 23-24 calendar. And so Susie's going to bring that one up. And so as our district leadership team worked to create the previous calendar that I just shared, we discussed feedback from many individuals about wanting to have a later start. Now, we know that the 23-24 calendar has been out for a long time, so we can't make any major revisions to it. But we did find it is a small opportunity for change, but I think it speaks to the feedback that we've had. And so that's why I'm bringing this proposal to you for a possible change. And so if you look at this calendar, this is the way it's currently set up. And so our student first day is August 9th. And then the student final day, if you go down to the bottom, is set up to be May 22nd. And so within that, it stays within the same week, but we saw that we could shift that one day. And even if it's just to say, let's try and set our foot in the ground on August 10th or thereafter. That's when we started this year. Let's see if we can do that. And so we're proposing a calendar that has a one-day shift where students would begin on, and I think we had that, would begin on Thursday, August 10th. There you can see that. Professional development days would be on the 8th and 9th, and then that would also change the way the year ends. And that would be then the student last day would be on the 23rd, with the staff last day on the 24th. Again, it's one day, but we thought it would probably not a bad idea to shift in direction. Yeah. Any questions on?
An advisory committee with, they were in support.
Yes, we, again, this is another change that we spoke to with each of our PAC teams, and yes, in support of that change too, yes.
Yeah, which I do love that too. And I think, again, this one speaks to knowing that when people were looking at the start date, and even if we would have loved to just flip everything, then you're flipping everything we worked on
Right,
like
right.
2 years ago.
Well, and
So-
families that made changes too, or
Right.
they said plain enough that we're not at the point that we can interfere with that, and it does impact some of the factors that I shared. So I do have one other thing that I'll speak to regarding, it's not on the agenda, but it's just regarding times. And the DLT did speak about a potential change in student start times at the high school and the middle school. And what we've talked about is making both the middle school and high school have the same start time and the same end time. And they would go from 8 to 3, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So the high school would be moving from 7:50 to 2:50, where they're currently, that's what the current schedule is, shifting back 10 minutes to go 8 to 3. The middle school, approximately 8:10 to 3:10, would be shifting forward to be 8 to 3. That change has several benefits. First of all, the high school and the middle school share some staff, and so there's traveling teachers that go back and forth between the high school and the middle school. And that change, we think, will allow them to work more efficiently as they're going back and forth between the buildings. And so if we can if we can put staff in a position where more of their time is connecting with students, that's what we want to do. That's our preference. And we think that that will help with that in mind. It also, a second benefit is this change will separate the busing routes between the middle school and the primary by 10 more minutes. And so it's always a little bit of a struggle for our bus routes to do the middle school routes, drop the students off, get back out to home in time to run the primary routes and get primary students to school on time. That's a constant struggle every day. And so if we can add 10 more minutes between those two bus routes, we think it's going to be much easier for those students to get to school on time, ready for learning, which is a better student experience. The third piece that it connects to, I spoke about the CAC school start time studies. One of the recommendations was to look at our high school students and possibly consider shifting their start time back. Our high school never really had a extraordinarily early start time. However, shifting back 10 minutes does honor that sleep study that was done as part of that CAC study, and high school students, I would think, would probably be pretty excited about 10 more minutes in the morning. It's not going to be a bad thing necessarily. So we wanted to, that's different from a calendar for approval, but I thought this was a good time to share that too.
And the other thing, a good question that came up during that meeting too, was just for the families who might have a middle schooler and a high schooler with drop offs. So we're like, well, the proximity isn't too bad, but also Mr. Stallings reminded us that the doors would open at the high school by 7:15 in the morning. So if somebody needed to do whichever one first. And then historically, the middle school had opened the door prior to COVID. It just in the comments, right? You would gather there, and at least right now, though, people are standing outside a little bit, so that shouldn't be a predicament. Really, I think with that change either for the families.
Yeah.
That was major.
Or drive down Wilmot and let them both off at the.
Right, and then, right, it's close enough. Uh-oh, watch out. Everyone's close to Wilmot.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion? Oh, sorry, questions.
Any questions?
May I have a motion to approve the board report, please?
So move.
May I have a second? I'll second. Roll call.
Mr. Bellmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Dean.
Yes.
Mr. Dollar.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, thank you. All right, treasurer's report.
Thanks, Jeannie. Item A, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on January 23rd and the planning meeting on February 14th. Approve the statement of revenues and expenditures for the month of January. Item C, accept with appreciation the list of donations. Item D, the appropriation adjustments for the month of February, and item E, approval of the report.
All right, thank you. Big thank you. I think needs to come out to the boosters for a lot of contributions to us. Thank you. Let's ask for please a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Thank you. I'll second. After that, we vote. Can I have a roll call?
Mr. D.
Yes.
Mr. Dollar.
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick. Yes. Mr. Bellmeyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, superintendent's report.
Okay, number one is a recommendation to approve resignations for the purpose of retirement. And so, yes. So congratulations, Mr. Gary.
Oh.
And Cindy Howell. We are so excited for them. And so let me give a little bit of background and then we'll pause for a second. So, Gary has worked in Wyoming for 29 years. Right now, in year 34, or actually has 34 altogether right now, 34 years. And so he's worked at Hilltop Elm, the middle school where he's currently teaching science, in addition to teaching just a few of the additional things. There's more. But he's had other roles within the district, including department chair, drama director, and before and after school intervention. And then Cindy, we'll come back to you, Gary. Cindy began her role as a library aide in 1998. She's worked at both Elm and Hilltop primary schools, and she'll be finishing up within her role at Hilltop right now. She supported students and staff, hosted visiting authors, and organized book fairs. And so we are super excited for both of them and wish them the very best in the next chapter of life, no matter what that brings. And as you can see, we've got Gary here, the man who's all heart, all the time, for kids, for others. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's been fun. It's not bad. I said I shouldn't come, because you won't keep it together. But I will permit, it's been a great 29 years, 34 of it all awesome. I had a great start in my career in Connecticut with this district very similar to Wyoming, so it was a great transition, easy transition when I came over. Started for 1 year here at the middle school in '94. I taught 5th grade for a year. Yeah, 1 year in '94, and then that was the last year. 4th grade was in the middle school. So then many of the people teaching 4th grade didn't really want to go into the primary buildings. So I was like, hey, I'll go because I was teaching everything to many 5th graders at the time. So I went from teaching 75 children to 24 all day, the same kids. And that's what I had, had come from. And it was great. I've had worked with great people.
So I'll tell you a story then. So today I called Lisa, or Debbie Giesiger. Dawn Giesiger is our chess coach. Oh, just so you can put a name with a face. And I said, because in Connecticut, you had Lisa Giesiger Gazal, you named her married name. She lives right next to home school. In Connecticut, he taught Lisa, and then he came to Wyoming and taught Lisa's younger sister.
And then when I was up in my last year at Hilltop, before I came there, I taught 1st grade, and then their children, so his grandchildren.
Right.
She wasn't in my 1st grade class, but I saw her all the time in there. So it was a real kind of neat, small world connection. It was a lot of fun.
Families, 2 states, or one family, 2 states.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3
And
generations.
I say, working with both of our children.
Yeah.
And both.
The year that I
Feel like you
did,
got all
in
of us.
It's all covered.
Games in the classroom setting, but when I took over the drama program, it was senior or junior year. So we had a lot of time, good time together, great, good experience in that. I enjoyed that so much.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Another fun fact, one of the best softball umpires.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Last time I was in this room, I did a presentation for a new science curriculum. And I came from the high school. I just finished umpiring the high school best softball game and ran over here to do that presentation. But thank you for that comment. More officials near to hear that.
Yeah.
You know how to time out the umpire more games.
My schedule is so full already into next fall.
Yeah, so that's happening, lots of golf.
Lots of golf.
Mhm.
Mike Murray
Uh-huh.
and Alton Clean
Oh, yeah.
involved, kind of connected, and we're having a little group of, there's another person that we met up with, and we do a lot of forces together.
I'm sure you can join this group that.
Well, now when I
plays
get
across
that
the United
text.
States.
Yeah, oh, I can. And then when I get the text, I see this, because we're in the group text, hey, we got a tea time for 8:15 on Thursday morning.
Mhm.
And I just look at it and say, someday. Very soon.
Well, thank you and
Thank you for
congratulations. You'll be
everything you guys
missed.
did.
Congratulations.
Very exciting, very exciting.
Yep.
Okay, so number 2 is a recommendation to approve new personnel, and this is for a recess aide at the middle school, and we will welcome Maria to that role. Number 3 is a recommendation to approve 3rd grade after school reading program. And these 2 staff members will help support students, and that will be over the next couple of months. And so we thank them for their efforts. Number 4 is a recommendation to approve 2022-2023 athletic supplemental contracts. And you can see the various sports that these fall under. And so thanks to these individuals for providing these opportunities for students. What it means is engagement. Students are connected in the classroom and out of the classroom, which makes a big difference in their overall experience. Number 5 is a recommendation to approve these winter and spring athletic workers who works at 49 events that we're participating in. Number 6 is a recommendation to rescind these non-athletic supplemental contracts. And these are, there's been a change in staffing and drama performance date change, and so we're not able to schedule the musical in spring. And so we're planning for the 23-24 school year. Number 7 is a recommendation to approve unpaid leave requests for these staff members. Number 8 is recommendation to approve new student clubs. And so you can see lots of information about student clubs. This is another great example of ways that our staff goes above and beyond, because there's a staff member committed to all of these. Number 9 is a recommendation to approve this curricular-based club for the 23-24 school year. Number 10, recommendation to approve the 23-24 clubs. These are all clubs that are in process right now, business being renewed. Again, just great opportunities in so many different ways for kids. And so then I'll shift. Item B, you can see, and this is a recommendation to approve a contract with Hamilton County Developmental Disabilities. And this is to support, it's an annual contract to support students with special needs. Item C is a recommendation to approve summer programs, course or camp proposals. So you can see we have 3 opportunities there: application boot camp, band camp, both of those at the high school, and then the Wyoming Science and Technology Camp. Great opportunities for students, and those are all well attended. And then item D, my last item, is recommendation to approve these 2 overnight field trips. One is DECA, one is Power of the Penn State Tournament, and our students compete. Do very well. And it's exciting for them, and it's a great opportunity. It's really wonderful that we can afford that opportunity with those students, and they do work very well.
I believe the DECA, they do presentations and competitions too.
Yeah, they do.
But thank you. All right, any questions? We have a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
Move.
May I have a second? Second. May I have a roll call?
Mrs. James?
Yes.
Mrs. Dollar?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yeah.
Mr. Bellmeyer?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Superintendent's update.
Okay, I'll just as an update, I'll just connect with something that's been brought up, and it's really the wonderful ways that the district has highlighted and engaged students across the district to celebrate and honor Black History Month, which has been really wonderful. So engaging activities happening at all 3 building levels. I thought what was really neat too was for everyone to be connected with the Alumni Association's efforts to highlight Wyoming graduates, which was really neat. And so our high school connected with that. Susie connected with that as a district. So I think that was a lot of fun for individuals to see the impact that our Wyoming graduates have had here locally, but really across the world. And then, Carrie, you mentioned this great culmination of the high school assembly, created by students, presented by students during the day for kids, and just a lively, really exciting opportunity, but then in the evening for the community, really a nice celebration that I was excited to see and proud of.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Looking at your face. I'm kidding. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? So moved. May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call? What did he say?
No, I'm not sure.
All right.
Mrs. Dollar?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Bellmeyer?
Yes.
Mrs. James?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.